It doesn't matter if you speak the same language or if you like any of the same things. If you're both crafters, you already have so much in common by default, and I didn't know that magic yet. I didn't realize that. Hi, my name's Mark, and welcome to the channel. Today I'm sitting to have sort of a heart-to-heart with you. I'm sharing the story of what my life has been like for the last 7 years, and that encompasses my knitting journey. So if you're interested in sitting, knitting, crafting, crocheting, spending a little bit of time with me today, I would love to have you here with me. So let's get into it. So today I'm coming to you from England. I'm on the tail end of a trip, a long trip. If you've been here on the channel, you've already heard about it. So right now my husband Ned and I are here in Hereford. Hereford is a city in England right on the Welsh border. So we are, I don't know, maybe less than a mile, maybe a couple miles from Wales. And this is a cathedral city. So I lived here 7 years ago now to work at Hereford Cathedral. And I've talked about this in some of the other videos I've made. And in that year, I was here at the cathedral on a visa to sing. And we sang 8 services a week, 8 choral services for various church services at the cathedral. And that was my job, just to show up to rehearsals, show up to services, and sing as part of the choir, which was a really unique experience to get to do that for my sort of full-time schedule for a whole year. And I had the best time. I loved it. And additionally, in that year, I felt so many shifts and so many changes in my life and in who I am and how I live. So it's really emotional to be back here. It feels really powerful, really special to be here again. And I haven't been here for 6 years since I left, mostly because of the pandemic. I thought I would make a point to come back 2 years later, maybe 3 years later, to visit friends, to come to services, maybe come for concerts that are going on. And it didn't happen, of course, because of the 2020 lockdown, the shutdown, and people's inability to travel and cross borders. So we're here. It took us 6 years, but we're here, and it's also really special to be here with Ned. And a fun fact that I'm sure Ned would like for you to know is that he came to Hereford as a boy chorister, I think when he was about 12 years old, something like that, with the choir that he sang with in Connecticut. So they took a tour, they came to Hereford, and they collaborated with the cathedral choir here and sang services for a week. And so this place also holds special memories for him. And so now coming here as a married couple is really powerful. And I already feel the tears behind my eyes. So last night we were sitting in an evening prayer service, which is a very simple service. It's all spoken. There's no music. There's no great pomp and circumstance. You're just sitting, reading psalms, saying prayers back and forth. So a priest will lead one line, and then anyone attending the service will say the responsory line. And it was a very small service. I think we were 2 of 5 or 6 people total. It was just a daily prayer service, nothing big, no special event at the cathedral. And it was really moving. It was powerful to be there. And as I sat in the service, I looked down at one point and I saw in the row in front of me a kneeler, a cushion that had been cross-stitched or crafted in some way. I have a picture I'll put up. And on the kneeler were sheep. And it just made me connect to what's going on in my life now. This new community, this new livelihood I have with knitting, with crocheting, with fiber. And it made me stop and count my blessings. So in that moment, I was overwhelmed, overcome by the amount of love and the special feeling I feel being in this city, in this space, and pairing that with the community I feel all over the world from anyone who sits and watches a video just like this one. And I was overcome, and so I just teared up in the moment thinking, wow, my life has changed in 6 years. So I just wanted to walk you through a little bit of what's shifted, what's changed in my life in the last 6 years. Before I jump into too much talking, this is a talking video, I'll show you what I'm working on. This is a test run of the sea glass sweater. If you were here on Wednesday, you saw that I'm officially launching my make-along, my first make-along that you can knit or crochet along with me, and that's the sea glass collection from Wool and Pine. So it's not just the sea glass sweater, it could be the sea glass t-shirt, the mini made for children, a hat, a cowl. I think that's it. There's t-shirt, pullover, regular cardigan, a mini version, hat, and cowl. So many of you signed up for this already, which is another thing that really hit me in the face with my community, to say there are people there. Several of you that watch may not comment, you may not write to me regularly, but you're there watching. So in this tracing of what's shifted in my life, what's happened to get me where I am today, I'm mostly tracing this through knitting or crocheting, through crafting. And I want to highlight throughout all of this the joy of crafting, the joy that knitting brings me, the joy that crocheting brings me in my life, no matter what I'm doing and no matter what's going on. And I imagine for you watching, if you're a crafter, you know what I'm saying. You can connect with that even when life sucks, you might have a craft, you might have a hobby that you can pick up that takes your mind off of it, or that you can pour your grief into, or even fill with happiness, depending on what's going on and how you feel the cards are being dealt at the time. So in my story, and I've told parts of this before, you can always skip around with the bookmarks, the chapters in these videos if you don't feel like listening to everything I have to say, and I don't blame you. After my year here in Hereford, I think I was officially bitten by the knitting bug. I just loved to knit. I loved to have something on the needles and be making something different each time, learning a new skill with every project I picked up. And that started here in Hereford. So I was hired to sing for the year, and I had a fair amount of free time compared to the previous schedule I had had in my life. And so I used that time. I used that time to learn to cook, to go on walks, to watch shows and movies that maybe I had missed out on when I was busier. And eventually I thought, I want to knit something for myself. And I was watching Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them from the Harry Potter franchise. And in it, there's a hand knit sweater that looks fairly vintage, and it caught my eye. I thought, oh, I love that. And I think it was fall here, autumn here, and it was time for me to have a scarf. And I don't think I had brought one with me, so I was either going to buy something at the store, or I thought maybe I could learn to make one. So that's what I started with. I went to the market one Saturday here in Hereford and picked up 2 contrasting colors to do a striped scarf. And I ended up doing it in 1x1 ribs, so knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1 across. That way it would be reversible, it would feel pretty squishy, and I would just change the colors to make it look kind of like the scarf from the movie. And once I started that, it went really, really slowly. I felt very awkward every time I picked up my needles, every time I worked a stitch. Going back and forth between a knit stitch and a purl stitch, especially as a beginner, is cumbersome. You bring the yarn forward or you bring the yarn to the back, and you have to make sure you're wrapping the yarn the correct way, and then you're actually pulling the stitch through and getting it from one needle to the other. And then you have your tension to pay attention to, and dropping a stitch, or any of those other variables that can strike you as a beginner with any stitch combination or new technique. So it went really, really slowly, but that scarf, I think I worked on it for about 2 months to get it done. and I was working on it a lot every day. I had a good amount of time to be knitting. It was filled with memories. It was filled with the memories of what I was doing at the time, which I can remember like it was yesterday. I don't have a very good memory, so being able to attach memories to a project for me is very powerful. If you know me in person, you know I have a very, very poor memory and my recall is not strong. So being able to recall a time 7 years ago now, like it was yesterday, is a pretty big deal because those memories are embedded in my craft, in my project. So I can remember I was living with Johnny and Joel, two of my very best friends now. And gosh, I feel like I'm just going to cry at any moment because these memories are so happy. Um, so I was living with two friends that at the time I knew were special, but I don't think I realized, how much they would mean to me. And hopefully for the rest of my life, you make friends that are special to you, whether they're friends you work with, friends you choose, someone you went to school with, maybe a neighbor or a family friend, or even a family member. I mean, it could be a sibling or a cousin or a parent that you feel is a best friend to you. And you don't always know in the moment how special that time is. So anyway, so much of that is wrapped up in the project. And just the thrill, the excitement of starting something new, starting a new hobby as an adult, which can feel really fumbly and silly. It's like trying to learn a new language or trying to learn how to play a musical instrument. Sometimes when you do those things as adults, they feel really scary or it feels really embarrassing to do because I think most of the time we're used to doing things that we feel confident doing. So there is that feeling attached to it, sort of the anticipation and excitement of doing something new to me. And then, of course, there's so much music attached to that project. I was here singing services at the cathedral. We were preparing for concerts. We did a lot of cool things that year. We sang a concert at Buckingham Palace for now King Charles and met him, which was a cool experience, especially as someone coming from America, to get to see a little bit of another country's monarchy and government and be behind the scenes there. We sang countless concerts and services, and then at the end of the year, we went on a trip to Rome, and we sang services there at the Sistine Chapel and in St. Peter's Square and in the Vatican, and we met the Pope. We also got to meet Prince William at one point. So there were really cool sort of big events happening that year that just happened to fall into my timeline. And then I was also in a really transitional part of my life. I was living in another country just for the year, which felt special and impactful, but I was preparing to move somewhere brand new. I was only here for a 1-year visa. I knew that after that year I would have to move and most likely move back to the States. And so I was applying to graduate school and sort of looking at applications on paper or on screen and not knowing where in the world I would go next and who would be part of my life. And here I am crying again. Looking back at that time, I had my siblings, I had my parents, I had some best friends spread out across the world, but none of those people were with me. I was moving somewhere on my own, and I mentioned I had Johnny and Joel, who really fell in immediately to be these best friends. But I didn't have a partner. I didn't have a boyfriend or a husband, and that part of my life felt very undecided. And I didn't really have a career set or a clear path yet of what I would want to do. So all of that felt very up in the air, very undecided. And little did I know that knitting and picking up a new hobby would one day become, I guess, kind of a career. That's what it feels like now, and that's what I want it to be. I have so many dreams and hopes for the future of what I might be able to do and what Ned and I might be able to do in tandem with this craft, whether that's being able to have a shop one day or have sheep and spin or dye or design, or even just host events if we were in a position where we could bring people together and share some of our lives with those people that like our company, that want to spend time knitting, crocheting, crafting, and being together. So we have big dreams, and maybe one day some of those things will come true. So anyway, after that year of knitting, and I should say here before I go on, one huge part of getting me on the right foot, getting me started successfully, was a knitting group that I belonged to here in Hereford. And this group of ladies would meet at the Green Dragon Hotel, just on the main street across from the cathedral, twice a month. And after I had been purchasing wool from one of the local shops for my first 2 or 3 projects, one of the ladies invited me and said, I don't know if you'd ever want to come knit with us, but if you'd like to, here's when we're there. And I went, and I was very nervous to go because I didn't know if I'd have anything in common with the people there, or if they would really like opening their group to me. And little did I know that when you have a craft like this, you already have so much in common with someone else who shares that craft. It doesn't matter if you speak the same language or if you like any of the same things. If you're both crafters, you already have so much in common by default. And I didn't know that magic yet. I didn't realize that. So I went and I had a great time. And these ladies were so warm and welcoming, and they taught me so much. So that's where I would go to ask my questions and show them things that weren't working out with my stitches, or trouble I was having deciphering a pattern, and they would help me and give me their input on favorite ways to cast on, favorite ways to increase or decrease, maybe an easier way to hold your needles and yarn, or an easier way to go about doing something. So coming back to Hereford, I reached out and I said, are you still knitting at the Green Dragon? And Sue, one of my friends there, said, yes, we'd love to see you if you want to come along. So Ned and I went just a few days ago, and it was great. I was nervous again because I get nervous about most things in life. And we walked in, and it was so many of the same faces, a couple new faces, and the people that had been there before remembered me, and they seemed excited that I was there. They were very nice. And we had a great evening, just sitting and not talking about anything terribly specific, but just catching up and hearing about the news in everyone's lives, whether it's people who are sick and we're dealing with losing them, or people that are moving, people that have these life changes going on, grandbabies being born, and new jobs, exciting things, sad things, just life. And it was really nice to sit there and to immediately feel like you could pop back into a community, back into a group. So moving on with my story, and I don't know how far I'll get. I'm already I have to look at the camera, 23 minutes into sitting here filming. After that year, the cards that were dealt to me meant that I was moving to Indiana, to South Bend, Indiana, to be a graduate student at the University of Notre Dame, to study music there. And I was really excited about that. I had never been there before. I didn't have any strong connections there. I knew a couple of acquaintances that were there, either as students or teachers. So there were a couple people that I knew well enough to ask questions about which apartment complex is a better place to live, and what's the best way for me to go about doing this. So that was helpful. But I was going in fairly blind, and I happened to walk into such a great community with the music school there, the graduate school in sacred music. And I remember we had a welcome party right before the semester started. And I got to meet the other singers that were in the program. There were one of each voice part. So one tenor, one bass, one alto, one soprano, just 4 of us coming in, which is a very small group to belong to. And then 4 more in the second year, so 8 singers total at a time. And these people blew me away. So I'm gonna, I feel like I'm just gonna keep crying. So these people now, again, have become some of my very best friends. And several of them were at my wedding, at Ned and I's wedding back in January. A couple of them were in my wedding party. So many of them sang as part of the service. And it all just means so much to me to have these communities. So I remember being terribly happy for 2 years at Notre Dame. And that was a really special time, a special time to be in that role as a student. I didn't quite have the responsibility of the world on my shoulders because I was a student for 2 years. I wasn't out working and having to take care of myself in the same way, if that makes sense. And I remember I did a lot of knitting while I was there. Not as much knitting as I do now, but I was really into knitting sweaters. And I had knit a Notre Dame sweater for myself before going to school. And I just did the pattern off of my own measurements and then did a chart for the school logo and then worked it in intarsia. And then when I got there, some of my classmates and teachers saw the sweater and they said, is there any way you can make that sweater for me? I'd pay you, I'd do whatever. And I said, well, I can't sell it to you because it's a trademarked logo and it was very strict about what you could sell with anything Notre Dame attached to it. But I said, I can make the sweater for you. If you buy the yarn, if you buy the wool, I'll make it, because I was new to knitting and I wanted to practice. I wanted to work with different fibers. I wanted to make sweaters in different sizes. I wanted to make sure that the sweaters I was making would actually work up to fit people appropriately. So I would take everyone's measurements and then plug in, the stitch count based on the gauge swatch and work the sweaters. And I made them out of at least 4 or 5 different types of fiber. And I probably made 12 sweaters for people while I was there. And that's what I did mostly for 2 years. I really didn't do projects for myself or anything else. I think I started making socks while I was at Notre Dame just because I wanted to learn how to make a sock. But otherwise I was making these sweaters, and that's a great memory. So I can look at someone's sweater or look at a picture I took of the knitting, and it takes me there immediately to remember what was going on and the growth that I was experiencing. And it was in that time that I started dating Ned, and those memories are so beautiful. And it's amazing how they come back to me by looking at a project that I was knitting at the time. And I had just a few knitters there that I would knit with. Emily, one of my best friends, she was in my wedding. I was in her wedding. And MK, we didn't have so much time to knit together because my second year of graduate school was the pandemic onset. So I think our final 3 or 4 months were affected by the lockdown, and then everything was virtual, so we didn't see each other anymore. But there was a little bit of knitting going on, which was great to have that community. And I remember we looked forward to sitting in the workroom together and working on our projects in between classes or in between rehearsals when we had time during the week. And I also would take my knitting to class, and I never wanted to be distracting with it, but if it was a lecture course, you sit there for 2 hours or 3 hours for a fairly long seminar lecture class, I would hold my knitting under the table, under the desk, and I would knit under the desk. So I'd work on things that I could just do in the round without any color changes, so that I could put it under the desk and knit for a couple hours and get a lot done. So after that, it was the pandemic, it was 2020, and I moved to Cleveland, Ohio. And if you've watched my other videos, you've heard part of this story, but I started another degree and it didn't end up being the right fit. It wasn't the right community for me. And it wasn't the right material to be studying and researching, writing, spending my time with. And that's okay. But that was hard to shift, transition, move somewhere new, and find out that you hadn't exactly landed in the right place at the right time. And it was the first time that had happened in a handful of years, so I consider myself very lucky for that. But it was hard, and then things got pretty dark. I was severely depressed and really concerned, sort of frantic over where do I go from here? And now what do I do? What does my life look like now? So I really lost direction and I think lost a sense of what brings me joy and what I'm good at, what gives me grounding in that time. There's a plane passing over, so I'm going to let it pass before I go on. I never know how much is picked up through the microphone, especially when I'm outside. So anyway, that's the sort of dark part of the story, the sad part of the story. And eventually, in that time, Ned moved to Cleveland. We moved into a house together. We got a dog. We got more cats. and then it hit me that I had things in my life that made me really happy. And then I had part of my life that I wasn't happy with. And I thought, why don't I change it? Why don't I just do something about it? And so then I stepped away from the program I was in and immediately felt a huge weight off my shoulders. And none of this is to say that that program is like that for everyone who walks through it. But for me, at least at that time in my life, I had changed enough that I thought this isn't what I want anymore. And this isn't what's right for me and my future. So then more shifts, more changes. I wasn't in school anymore. I was sort of popped out back into the real world and I started teaching. I started teaching at a college and I love teaching. I love working with students. I was leading choir and teaching voice lessons one-on-one. And I enjoyed that. But the school I was at was in trouble. And I knew that wasn't going to last. And I did it for about a year and a half before stepping away. And then a year later, that institution unfortunately folded and closed up completely. So then again, I felt like I was floating, like I didn't have anything. And it was at that point that I thought, okay, I'll sing as much as I can. I'll play as much as I can for work. I'll send my resume and recordings out and do more of that. So that picked up and I started doing more and more. And then someone very special in my life, Beth at Around the Table Yarns, turned around in church choir one day and said, would you like to come work at my shop? And I said, yeah, I really would. And it was one of those things where something's in front of you, but you don't always see it, or you don't know that you can just ask for it. And somebody might say, yes, what you want is also what we want, or this would be good for us too. And so then my life turned into music and fiber, music and wool, music and knitting, music and crocheting. And so then my crafting world opened up and I had everything at my fingertips. I have this world of mentors, of mentorship and teachers, and a world of fiber that comes through this amazing shop in Shaker Heights, Ohio. So it's amazing how much that's transformed my life. And then into that experience of working at a wool shop and getting to teach or getting to help people with their stitching and looking at a pattern and figuring out what went wrong and how do we get back on track. Eventually I thought, okay, now I want to go out into the world online and this is what I want to talk about. This is what I want to share and this is what I want to chronicle. As I said earlier, I don't have the strongest memory and I wanted to remember things a bit better. I wanted to remember this time of my life. I want to remember the projects I'm making. I want to remember the people that I'm spending time with. And so I thought, I'll do it through YouTube. I'll start filming things and just see how it goes. So I started filming about a year ago, maybe a little later, and figuring out how in the world do you edit a video, how in the world do you put text on screen, how do you put music with it, how does YouTube work? And I started uploading, and very fortunately for me, some of my early videos got quite a bit of traction, and thank you for watching them. Thank you for clicking and sharing or commenting or whatever you did to make that happen and bump things up in the algorithm. And then more life change. I got married, and it was right around the time of my wedding that the channel had its first good stride of a video that really picked up. And that was fortunate timing because I felt like things in my personal life were really moving forward, and things here with this sort of new path were also moving forward pretty rapidly. And then after that, you know the story. You've probably been watching since then. So at the start of this calendar year of 2024, my goal was to post something every week. And at some point I thought, why don't I start posting something else each week, doing sort of a more relaxed video? And some of them have done very well. Some of them are a little like a blip on the radar and don't do quite as well, and that's okay. But I think I've been able to keep up, and I've been coming to you every week with some sort of video, with some sort of story or experience or project, and I've been having a lot of fun. Sometimes it's hard to do. Sometimes I struggle to get in the right mind space to sit down in front of a camera and open myself up and talk. But other times it just flows, and I think it's good for me. I think it helps me feel grounded, and it helps build my confidence, and it makes me feel like, I don't know, I'm affirming something that I am good at, whether that's crafting, churning out a project, or talking. I love to talk. I've always talked a lot. I used to get sent out of class as a child because I talked too much, and because I would braid hair during class, and they'd say, this is science class, you can't do that. So anyway, here we are. And that's what's happened to me in the last 6-7 years. And that's been my crafting journey, mostly knitting, sometimes crochet. And now I'm amazed by what crafting has done for me, to feel like I have this new career, this new possible way to earn a living, and a way to reach people, and to build a community that really takes care of itself, takes care of its own. If you haven't seen the videos on this trip, we went up to Shetland, and that felt like such a powerful experience, a powerful marker in my crafting journey, to meet with people that are so creative, and people that have designed or helped forward the wool industry, the textile industry, and share what they make there on a very small group of islands with the world. It's amazing how many people say they use Jameson yarn or Jameson and Smith yarn for their projects. The number of examples I see in knitting groups and on Ravelry, and people commenting here, it blows me away. So I remember at the end of that trip, after Ned and I had spent about 3 hours inside Jameson's picking colors, we went to have some fish and chips because we were a bit delirious and hungry. And as we sat there, I started to cry, started to tear up, because I was so happy. And I thought, I can't believe we're here. I can't believe that we're on this island out in the sea, north of Scotland, because of yarn, because of crafting, and because of sheep and wool. And it's really cool. So this is me saying the biggest thank you to anyone who clicks on my videos and watches, and then chooses to come back or chooses to tell a friend about it. It just makes me feel so loved. And I know there's some people out there who don't love me. It doesn't quite go that far. And that's okay too. But thank you for helping me get here. And thank you for making this craft such a big part of my life. And I hope for you that it does all the things that it does for me. I hope it brings you joy. I hope that it's something that can support you when life is hard, or something that can go alongside your joy when life is going really well. that's about it. I just wanted to say a couple shout outs. A shout out to my mom for being one of my best friends and for loving me so much and getting me to where I am. And my dad, too. My brothers and sisters, my best friend Teresa, Megan, Ned. If you watch these videos, you know how much I cry. And thank you to all of the wonderful knitting mentors and crochet mentors I have in my wonderful community in Shaker Heights, Ohio at Around the Table Yarns. So thank you. Thank you to everybody. And this feels like a big goodbye, but it's not. I'm going to post this this week, and I'll post something else next week, and I'll try to keep posting until I can't post anymore. So let me think of something to say to close this all up. It feels dramatic to say, but I think I'll probably title the video something like How Knitting Saved My Life, which is true. To have something that brings you so much peace, something meditative, it could be prayerful to you. It could just be the thing that you can't wait to do when you get off work and you get home and you have some time to yourself. So this craft plays such a huge role in my life, which sounds really dramatic, but it's true. Everybody's got a thing, something that they do, it's something they cling to. So I hope that you get to experience the same kind of joy, the same kind of peace when you get to do whatever your craft, whatever your hobby is. So let me know in the comments. Let me know if you feel similar in any way to what I feel. Let me know what you're working on. Let me know what you're excited about. If you have big things going on in your life, I'm always happy to hear about it. So you can leave a comment below. You can find me on Instagram, on Ravelry, at MakerMarkKnits. You can also send me an email if that's easier for you. You can send me a letter or a card. I have my P.O. box at the end of the video, and it's also in the description box below. And I'm always really, really happy to hear from you, no matter how you get in touch. If you haven't heard, I'm doing a make-along, my first make-along for anything from the Sea Glass collection by Wool and Pine. I talked about it earlier in the video a little bit. That link is below as well, and you can go sign up for that if you're interested in knitting or crocheting along with me for the next few months. And I'm really, really excited about the turnout that has already shown up. So thanks for supporting me in that. Thanks for anything you do to support my journey here, whether it's watching a video, sharing it with somebody, liking a post, or supporting me over on Patreon. I know that's something that not everyone is in a place to do, and I don't expect that, but there are several of you who have shown me such generosity to support what I'm doing with these videos and the time it takes to sit down and edit and do some of the business side of all of this. So thank you so much for your support. It means the world. As always, thank you for choosing to be here with me today. I hope we get to spend a lot of time together in the future. So happy knitting, happy crocheting, happy crafting to you, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Bye.